Right, the Analytic Tools Group.
Hear me? Oh, good. I'm going to report on the results from the Analytical Tools and Workflow group. I want to say we had a very good group and a productive discussion. I also want to thank the Esri representatives that were in the room with us. I think they kept us going in a good direction and added some good input. So on the pluses side for the analytical tools, probably our biggest plus that we all agreed on was that Python as a glue language and Python's ability to bring, actually I'm going to hit several of these points, but Python's ability to allow a modular stringing together of tools. The fact that our toolbox has broken down operations into separate pieces that then can be aggregated is a big plus. The ability to share tools and create repeatable workflows that can be distributed and shared among users is a huge plus. And along those same lines with the Python as a glue language, the ability to integrate external tools from other applications into ArcGIS is a huge bonus. Supporting better modeling and data integration through support of scientific data formats, for example, the BAG format, being incorporated into ArcGIS at the core level is a huge improvement. Also, the bathymetric information system and its ability to allow us to catalog, manage, explore, and discover our data sets to better know what we have and how we can use data has been a big improvement. And finally, on our pluses, the fact that Model Builder opens up what can be very complex processing and analysis workflows and the creation of those workflows to non-programmers has been a huge improvement and a plus, both for folks who are non-programmers or folks that may have a programming background but have not necessarily learned some of the newer languages or newer programming environments. The sort of visual, modular way that Model Builder works has been a very useful and effective way for those type of people to create complex workflows. So those are our pluses. And on the not so good side, I think that one of the biggest problems for both users and developers has been version compatibility problems, especially for developers who are creating third-party tools. The fact that the tools that they've already created, many of them seem to break when new versions of ArcGIS come out, has made maintaining their tools and keeping them working as time goes on a huge challenge. And for developers that are not funded or working on a very limited budget, this is a big challenge to keep the tools that you've already created working, and also to, as you're developing new tools, to make sure they're going to work in coming versions. And I think that the point that if there can be more communication on what's coming up next in the next version, if APIs are changing, if other aspects of the operation of the ArcGIS software that are potentially going to cause needed changes on the development side can be communicated to the developers ahead of time, that will help them a great deal. The documentation of technical information has been a problem for some in that the specific algorithms and techniques that are used by a particular tool, the way that results are arrived at, is not always described at a low enough level for folks in the scientific community to rely on. And this includes citations, if the method being used is an established method that's been published, it would be good to have more information about exactly how the software is doing what it's doing and not have it be a black box. I think a lot of folks have talked about time and the need for better handling of time. One of the great needs, I think, that was brought up is the need for the ability to aggregate data over time. For example, the ability to create data sets that represent from a series of climate or sea surface temperature, satellite imagery data, subsets of representative subsets of aggregations over time would be a good thing to have. Interpolation in truly 3 and or 4D would be something that would be very useful to the analytical community. And I think that several of the groups have touched on this, but it seems to be a common thread that it can be difficult to find the scripts, tools, or models that do what you need to do, whether they be core ArcGIS functionalities or third-party. The example of how easy it was to find things in ArcScripts when it existed was brought up, and some of the folks who have created their own tools and tried to distribute them through ArcScripts and through the newer website and resource forums have noticed a decrease in their use and a decrease in the ease of finding the tools that are relevant using some, and I'm sure this is going to evolve over time, but I think that there's been a recurring theme that finding what you need to do the task you have at hand could be easier. I want to also say, as I'm going, please anybody else in my group, if I've garbled anything or left important points out, please raise your hand and we can add to what I'm telling you. So in our interesting points, the ArcMarine data model came up repeatedly and was also one of the elements in our plus column. But what we'd like to see is further ArcMarine data model development. And this maybe could include a planning meeting, sort of getting the band back together, but also bringing in new input to revisit the marine data model, maybe come up with ways to integrate tools into it, a la the ArcHydro data model, and maybe come up with some sub-versions or sort of specialty applications for the marine data model that address specific user groups and needs. We'd like to see both ESRI and the community publish more articles and white papers on tool implementation and techniques. And this gets back to the lack of full documentation for some of the tools, including links and citations, cross-referencing, and it gets back again to the need for a more easy and effective and efficient way of finding the tools that you need. We think it might be useful, maybe on the Resource Center, to survey users about the tools that they're using, and also both within ArcGIS and third-party and external tools, and also what they would like to see. So some sort of forum or survey mechanism to collect those kinds of information from the user community would be quite useful. Some new tools and functionalities that might be good to see in the future include tools for dynamic ocean management and or fleet management along the lines of the AIS data, but also sort of on the survey planning, MPA monitoring, and other sorts of applications. I think several groups have mentioned the time depth slider or the time slider, but as Pat mentioned in the first day, an equivalent slider for depth and or any other dimensional variable would be useful. And the slider is sort of the first step, but what would be really nice would be to be able to do more analysis on those variables. And I think someone in our group brought up the need for new tools and functionalities and a bridge between industries to encourage more use of ArcGIS in the offshore exploration and planning realm. I think we have just a couple more interestings. The idea of alternate data representations that improve scientific analysis was brought up yesterday, and this could include derived layers, different ways of representing the same data set while maintaining the original data set's qualities, resolution, and so forth, but showing the data either summarized, aggregated, resampled, what have you, in different ways, sort of a la the way the pyramiding works, but in a way that would allow you to see by choice and also design analyses on those sort of alternate data representations, and also plots and symbology that are sort of user-specific. More tools for creating plots that are specific to either data types or applications, be they geological, oceanography, physical oceanography, such as profile casts, and what have you. And finally, somebody in our group brought up the fact that some of the geoprocessing applications that you can access through online services seem to perform much better and quicker than the same process on the desktop. And so, because I think of the design considerations when creating one of these services to work online, things can be done much more efficiently, and you're forced to do things much more efficiently when you design for that environment. And trying to adopt those same practices and implementing them on the desktop may be a good direction to go. I think that's all that we have to report. If anybody in my group wants to, Ellen?
Thank you. I guess there were three things I wanted to bring up. One is nobody's talked about working with climate data, and one of the things we've discussed a few times, and Pat's going to be working on a little bit more, is the idea of standards for downscaling of climatic data globally, or hopefully to work on in more fine-scale applications. Couple other things we talked about. We talked about the need for more internationality in these workshops in science. I'd like to just bring up, and this is something that has to do with what we've talked about in this group and in marine ecology about tools, is that tools are not just computer science. Our own science could not do what it's doing without these tools, and many of our pluses had to do with the sharing of tools and how many more people in our community can do good science because of these tools. So I think we need to open up our paradigm of what science is, and in marine science, and these tools are necessary in geospatial science. And I just really support the idea of publishing tools, analyzing tools, research on tools, comparative tools. That's really, really important. And then I'll shut up after one more point, which is we talked about the importance of things like Marine Map and Sea Sketch that really open up the processing of community-based data and really open up ArcGIS to that. Otherwise, Pat, you did a great job.
Thank you for adding those points, Ellen. I do think I kind of rushed through some of that. But certainly the sharing and dissemination and interaction and collaboration that's possible by sharing these tools was something we talked about at length.
Yeah, Pat, I liked your comment about your first page about the what's next for Arc Marine, and I was wondering if Dawn or someone else could comment on that. Have we got plans for it? I mean, I know originally we made it very detailed, and then we scaled it way, way back to make it very general. And I was under the impression that we kept it at the general level so individuals could build as needed. Could you comment on that?
Yes, so with the Arc Marine, I glossed over this very quickly in my introductory remarks yesterday. The moving Arc Marine forward is a key element in our strategic plan for oceans. I'm not sure if it's in the small ebook that you have. I can't remember what's in those 26 pages, but the full Esri Oceans strategic plan is a 95-page document, and so moving Arc Marine forward is a big part of that. And in our efforts to do that, this is wonderful because we definitely need the community input. I think having a webinar or a workshop to discuss all of these issues that you've raised about moving Arc Marine forward and actually providing feature classes and relationships, categories that are more focused on these sub-communities such as marine ecology, estuaries. And the estuaries, I think, is a very interesting case because that's a great opportunity to combine Arc Marine with Arc Hydro. Back in the early 2000s, when all of these customized data models were being developed, there was some discussion about combining these data models together, just taking at the UML, the Uniform Modified Language level, to pick and choose the feature classes and relationship classes and the object classes that you'd like and put together an Arc Marine / Arc Hydro, perhaps an Arc Marine / Arc Atmosphere, and so forth. So there were some discussions over lunch about a possible workshop at the next Monterey GIS user group meeting, and other venues. But yes, that is definitely on our radar screen. I have as my personal research assistant at Esri, Sean Walbridge, who's been running the microphones. Sean is, that's not Sean. Where's Sean? That's Chris. Sean, oh, okay, thanks. Sorry, Chris. Sort of look like Sean. But Sean he's an ocean GIS engineer, new employee at Esri, and he works specifically for me on my projects. So he has been tasked with actually taking Arc Marine forward. He's learning Arc Marine, coming up to speed on all the work that we've done from 2001 through the publication of the model in 2007. And so he's going to be an integral part of this process. But yes, let's talk further offline about all of your hopes and needs and plans for Arc Marine. And this will be great because it's nice to have something supported. So we have a dedicated ocean GIS engineer supported to this effort. As we know, with many of these data model efforts, they were grassroots. And so the original data model team for Arc Marine consisted of myself and Pat Halpin, Joe Bremen, Michael Blonkovich, and we had many of you were case study testers. You were involved in helping us to publish the initial reference book, but we all did that on our own time. And it's interesting how that was unfunded. You know, we didn't get a grant to do Arc Marine. It's different from Arc Hydro because Arc Hydro actually received some support from Esri in order to move that forward. It's one of the reasons why it's such a successful effort. It's one of the reasons why there's so many tools that were initially built specifically for Arc Hydro. But now we have a little bit more support for that, and let's move it forward. That's great.
Along the same lines of working with the Arc Marine, and it didn't make it into our list, but one of our folks in our group mentioned that now in ArcGIS, the case tools are not installed automatically when you install ArcGIS, and that has been a hardship, specifically in an academic setting where they may install ArcGIS across hundreds of client machines and then find out later, oh, case tools isn't there anymore. And then fixing that in the middle of the semester and trying to put it on every machine can be a big hardship. So I don't know if that was done for a reason or if there's a possibility of bringing it back, but that was described as a need to have case tools installed by default. Any other questions?
Yes, about we hear a lot about data, about tool sharing, And I guess I'm going to ask a question both to Esri. I'm part of Esri, but maybe to Don and also to the community in general. Would there be an interest in having Esri create a platform to exchange tools, something similar to what other technology providers have, such as Apple or Google, that wouldn't be an app store, but maybe a geoprocessing tool store, where people would implicitly, I mean, the good tool, the really valuable tools would implicitly be vetted by the user because they would come up on the top on the searches, and there may be some monetary exchange between the provider of tools and the users of tools. Not necessarily, the goal would not necessarily be to make more money, but to incentivize people to share the tools that they use and they created for themselves. I don't know if that's something that would be well received by the community, because it wouldn't be free. Maybe some tool would be for free, some tool would be for money, but I'm not sure if that is something that could be interesting for both parties.
Did you want to respond to that, Emilio? I'd like to respond to that because I think that's an excellent idea, and I think it's something that we'll have to think about and discuss further. But I think we have a wonderful exemplar for this in the Ecosystem-Based Management Tools Network. I mean, that has been such a wonderful project for those of us who have been involved in sharing our tools, using the catalog to find various tools. The series of webinars that has been underway for many years in order for those of us who share our tools to talk about our tools and to explain them to the user community, that has been fantastic. So my first reaction is if there's some way that we can partner with NatureServe to expand that out. Lori, do you have any reactions to that?
I do. Because like a lot of projects, that was funded through a grant, which is ending. And so I do think what the next step for that is an opportunity for collaboration with Esri to sort of make sure it lives on and grows and evolves in new ways. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there.
So this is not exactly following up on that, although there is a linkage in the idea of sharing. This is going to be a roundabout pontificating, but I think Python has been mentioned a lot in this context, and there are powerful reasons for that. I think one, in the analysis presentation, you made a point that it's a great glue language. I think the wider computing science community recognizes that. It's also a lower barrier of entry. But I think more specifically in oceanography, I think the reason, a reason people like Rich, who used to be a MATLAB, well, I can't come up with the right adjective, but MATLAB is a fundamental piece of software in oceanography. The reason I think Python is becoming very compelling within oceanography is because it shares a lot of features and a lot of low-level data models. And also, it has taken up a lot of the ability to read and interact with the same data models. On top of that, like Rich made a good point that the wider oceanographic community has developed its own data models, and the issues that we're discussing here involve how does the GIS world, and specifically Esri, incorporate them? Do you build your own data structures within Esri, or do you support, as Rich said, a community process of developing common data models? Well, I shouldn't use that term because it's CDM is a specific thing, but generally community data models that, for example, may be implemented in Python and are transportable, can be used directly within Esri software, but can also be used outside. And I think that I would encourage that path, I guess, of building things that are shareable and transportable, and they're not held exclusively within the Esri environment, so that you encourage this movement across fields. I think otherwise, if you focus too much on what the internal data models that are only within Esri, you lose the opportunity to bring in or attract oceanographers who are already embracing Python for a lot of reasons. If you open this door, this bridge, I guess, like Fledermaus Bridge, there's wider possibilities for entraining oceanographers who wouldn't feel that they need to do all or nothing, that they can just do MATLAB, do Python, or do ArcGIS as they need to. And I'll stop there.
I think that's an excellent point on which to end and to move into the break. But this is an idea that some of us have been discussing since the early 1990s, as I recall my own graduate school days. Lori, you want to add to that?
Group 5, or are we gonna?
So hang on that thought. Let's thank the Analytic Tools group. That was great.